movie begins with many reporters coming out of a courthouse. They all want to know the story of Rico, a mobster who murdered several police officers and is using his fortune to get away with it. With this news, the public criticism falls on District Attorney Estabrook, who ignored all the protocols and declared the evidence against Rico inadmissible, which is how Rico secured his freedom. Outside the court, the crowd gathers in a headhunting frenzy. Everyone knows Rico is guilty, and they are outraged by the corruption revealed that day in court. After being escorted, Rico and his men can finally avoid the crowd and leave unharmed. At home, a man hears the news that Rico has been released. He has a photo of one of the officers murdered by Rico, and it seems he's planning something. This man has a gun, and although we can't see his face, it's obvious he's wearing a police uniform and is getting ready to go out. On the highway, Rico and his men enjoy their freedom and mock the corrupt system that gave in to their demands. Everything is possible with enough money. Suddenly, the officer appears and forces them to stop the vehicle. He approaches the occupants and carries out a routine check while enduring the criminals' taunts, who threaten to have him fired. After making everyone lower their windows, the officer draws his weapon and kills them in cold blood. A few minutes later, the police arrive at the scene, including our protagonist Harry and his partner Early. Lieutenant Briggs shows up and orders Harry to leave. He is still not fully on duty due to a recent brutality scandal, and the lieutenant doesn't want him near the action. It's clear that Harry is a rogue gunman, only useful in certain situations. Disappointed at not being part of the investigation, Harry goes to have lunch at his favorite place at the airport, where he notices a hostage situation inside an airplane. He offers his help. Moments later, we see him in a pilot's uniform boarding the hijacked plane. There, he waits for the right moment to make his move, subduing one of the hijackers. The other one is an easy target since the protagonist isn't afraid to pull the trigger, even in a plane full of civilians. When the lieutenant arrives, there's nothing left for him to do. Harry is taking care of the entire situation, and everyone is safe. That night after his shift, Harry meets his friend Charlie, who is having a rough time because his wife left him. But Harry is not the friend who offers comfort, so he continues on his way to the shooting range, where he meets the new recruits, Grimes, Astrakhan, and Davis. The next morning, we see the mysterious killer again. This time, he's arrived in Beverly Hills at a luxurious mansion, where a group of people is enjoying themselves by the pool. The killer throws a tear gas suitcase into the water, a perfect distraction for what's about to happen. Suddenly, he is standing by the pool and starts shooting the guests indiscriminately with a machine gun, not caring who they are. He then gets on his motorcycle and escapes once again without leaving a trace. Back to Harry, he takes a moment to visit Carol, his friend Charlie's ex-wife, and tells her that Charlie's having a really hard time with the breakup and has even threatened to kill himself on several occasions. A few minutes later, Early calls Harry to tell him they're about to catch some thieves and invites him to join in. Just when the thieves make their move, Harry and the team are ready to respond. Harry waits behind a window for a clear shot, and when he gets it, he pulls the trigger with his .44 Magnum, sending his target flying. He then chases the last thief around the store until he has a clear shot. Meanwhile, we meet Sydney, a pimp who has been keeping an eye on one of his employees, and discovers she's been stealing from him. The woman tries to convince him otherwise, but Sydney has proof, and when he finds more money hidden in her underwear, he kills her and leaves her body abandoned in a car in the middle of the street. The next day, Sydney drives his luxury car down the highway, and the mysterious killer appears once again. He follows Sydney to a remote area and forces him to pull over. Sydney, who's used to bribing cops on a daily basis, tries to do so with this one, but he doesn't expect the bullet that pierces his skull a second later. That night, when Harry returns from work, he is approached by his neighbor Sony, who bluntly tells him she's been trying to get his attention for months, and that he ignores her. After that, Harry goes up to his apartment, and seconds later, Sony arrives to be intimate with him. An opportunity cuts short when the lieutenant calls, ordering him to get to the morgue immediately. There, the lieutenant shows him all the bodies that have arrived since the killer started prowling around. Because of this, the lieutenant restores all of Harry's privileges and reinstates him as a police officer. Furthermore, some witnesses claim to have seen a police officer leaving the scene right after the shots were fired. Odd behavior indeed. As part of the investigation, Harry questions a mobster named Palancho, whom he suspects is using one of his henchmen to eliminate the competition. In the city center, some undercover officers are keeping an eye on a man named Guzman, who remains safely in his penthouse. However, the killer is rapidly approaching by the stairs. Soon after, the criminal makes his move and kills Guzman and everyone with him in his penthouse. He then escapes and runs into a cop, who he also shoots. The undercover officers arrive at the building, and the killer uses his disguise to lead them astray, while he stays behind to hold back the curious bystanders. There he removes his helmet and goggles, revealing that he is Davis, the rookie who just joined the force. When Harry arrives at the station, he discovers his friend Charlie was the cop killed alongside Guzman. A few days later, during Charlie's funeral, Davis arrives to offer his condolences to the family, prompting Harry to ask how he got to the scene of the crime so fast. Later, Harry notices something even more suspicious. Davis is a rookie, but he has the best marksmanship in the department. In fact, he dethroned Harry, who had held that title for 9 years. Following his gut feeling, Harry returns to the shooting range that night to extract one of Davis's bullets from the targets and compare it to the killer's bullets. The next morning, he shows Briggs the ballistics analysis but doesn't reveal whose bullet it is. Instead, he asks Briggs to assign Davis to be his backup on the next operation. A few hours later, they start the operation to arrest Palencio. Upon arriving, they find him holed up with his men, and he kills the officer who knocks on the door. The shootout begins, and Harry eliminates several of them. By circling around, Davis also shows what he's capable of, quickly taking out 2 thugs. Palencio, trying to flee in his car, encounters Harry, who jumps onto the hood, causing Palencio to lose control and crash to his death. After the operation, Harry is convinced Davis is no rookie. His performance was exceptional. Now all he needs is proof that Davis is connected to the murders. But that won't be necessary because Davis and the other rookies confront Harry and threaten to kill him if he keeps meddling in their mission to wipe out all the city scum. The guys don't do anything to him at that moment. In fact, they've planned something more poetic. They plant a bomb in his mailbox. Luckily, Harry is cautious and notices it. After disarming the bomb, he tries to contact Early, but there's no answer because Early, at that very moment, is opening his own mailbox, which explodes. Lieutenant Briggs then appears to take Harry to the hospital to see Early, but suddenly shows his true colors and holds Harry at gunpoint. We discover that the lieutenant is the leader of the rogue cops. He's fed up with following orders from his superiors, who do nothing to stop criminals and only profit from their illegal businesses. Harry seizes the moment while the lieutenant is monologuing, catching him off guard and taking his weapon. However, one of the motorcycle assassins arrives to support Lieutenant Briggs. Harry manages to knock the lieutenant unconscious, but now his biggest problem is the expert shooter coming after him. The chase extends throughout the city, and Davis alerts his companions to provide support. Meanwhile, Harry uses a drifting maneuver to get rid of the lieutenant, and then takes advantage of a blind spot to do a 180-degree turn and catch the assassin by surprise. However, the other 2 show up just then, and since Harry's gun went flying during the crash, he has no choice but to flee on foot to a huge ship anchored nearby, with the killers scouring the place for him. Taking advantage of the darkness inside the ship, Harry confuses the young killers, making them waste their bullets shooting at nothing. In that instant, he sneaks up behind one of them, knocking him out with a flurry of punches, leaving only Davis. Davis arrives seconds later, finds his partner, and then hears Harry trying to start the motorcycle on the boat's deck, prompting another chase in which both of them fly across the deck. Davis falls into Harry's trap and plunges into the sea. Victorious but cautious, Harry leaves to find a phone to call for real backup. However, the lieutenant appears, ready to kill him for good. But he changes his mind and plans to frame Harry for everything that happened, saying Harry was the leader of the renegade assassins. Fortunately, Harry has enough time to activate the bomb left in his mailbox, and when the lieutenant drives the car far enough away, it explodes, sending him to his end.